Well, hello and welcome to this latest video in the series Bye Bye Windows, Hello Linux. Today we're going to configure and have a look at the interface for Linux Mint. Okay, so here we left it last time. We just installed Linux Mint and this is basically what the screen looks like. Don't worry about these two items here. These are because of the use of a virtual machine and you won't have these on your system. So don't worry about that. That's just because I'm running a virtual machine. It says check your drivers. Now we're going to do this a little bit later because there's a couple of steps that we need to do before we do this. We'll close that down and we'll come to the welcome screen. If we click on first steps, it says system snapshots. Now this is quite important. It's the same as system restore in Windows, and it will restore your system files back to a certain place if there's a problem. As you can see, we have to put in our password, and this is something you're going to get used to in Linux because this will affect some important files, system files, and that type of thing. We have to put in the password and authenticate. Now we're going to actually set up time shift. We're using rsync. This is the one that you need. Do not use btrfs. Okay, we're using rsync. So click on next. It's going to actually look at your system and decide what it's going to do and how it's going to do it. So this will take a moment. As I say, this is the same. This doesn't save your data. This is just your programs, your running programs. So it is the same as sort of the system backup, system restore in Microsoft Windows. And you need to back up your data separately. Okay, so we need to decide where we're going to put the snapshot. Now I've got lots of room on the first hard disk. As you can see, there's 35 gig free, so there's a lot of room on there. So it's a selected one, so I'm going to use that. Now if this is an SSD drive, which you might have, then I would recommend you put it onto an ordinary hard drive and put it onto one where you've got quite a lot of space. Okay, so we're going to put it on the first drive. Click next. Now it says keep 5 daily and this type of thing. This is system restore. You don't need to keep lots and lots and lots of files. So we're going to just have one daily one. We're going to have one weekly one, and we're going to have 2 monthly ones. Okay. Now what this will allow you to do is get back to the previous day or previous week or previous month. If you're not changing your system files a lot, then you can just use monthly, and that would be suitable. But if you're going to be changing them quite a lot, then I would recommend that you actually do this fairly regularly. I'm actually going to change the daily to 2 and the weekly to 2 as well. That would probably be better so that we can go back on that. Now this does an incremental backup, which means it's not doing a full backup each time. The first time you run it, it will do a full backup. After that, it just does incremental backup, so it doesn't become too large. So those settings are fine. Okay, and we'll click on finish. And this is the time shift panel. Now I would recommend, before we do anything at this point, that we actually create one which will be the default one. So just click on create. That's all you need to do, and it will start creating it. And we'll give this a nice suitable comment so that we know what this is, and we can get back to it. So we can get back to this position, the absolute load position, at any time. Now this is going to take a few minutes, so I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, that's finished, and as you can see, it's on the screen. You can do a manual one whenever you like. You don't have to do them manually. It will, once it's been set up, it will always do it. So I'm going to put a comment which will just be initial install. So that tells me that if I ever need to get back, I can get back to the absolute initial install that I did. Okay, so that's time shift, and it will now run and do it all automatically. Okay, now next on the list is driver manager, and I would say no to this at the moment. I would actually do the update manager first. This is so that you have all the latest files and driver files on your system. So we're going to launch that, and again it'll ask, well, it'll come up and actually tell you what it's going to do and how you're going to do it. So it'll do the security updates, it'll do a software update, and you can also set up your system snapshots, but we've already done that in TimeShift. So click OK, and this will take a moment. Right, now the first thing it's going to do is ask to switch to a local mirror, and this is one of the things I recommend that you do. So click on yes, and again you'll need to enter your password because we're dealing with system files, and anytime you need to deal with your system files. Okay, so I'm not in the US, so I shall double click on this, and it will now go away and find out which are the fastest ones, like fastest mirrors. Now, being near the University of Kent in the UK, I'm going to accept this. Now this will take quite a long time to run through, so I'm just going to click apply, and you can do the same for the base. Double click on it, but this time you might have to wait. I'm looking for the University of Kent. That's the one there, which is the same one. That's the University of Kent. Now that is a lot slower than the UK mirrors at the top, but it's always better to use the same server because then they should be up to date. Okay, you now need to update your cache, so click on OK, and this will take a moment while it just downloads everything from, and it really depends on how fast your internet connection is as to how quickly this will take place. You can see what's actually happening at any time by clicking on details. Maybe I should have taken the faster ones. Not to worry. Okay, so we've done that, so we can click on close, and now it says that there is an update for Update Manager. So click on apply the update, and again, because we're dealing with system files, you have to put in your password. This is how Linux is much more secure, in that any time that there's going to be any change to system files at all, you will have to put in your password. Whereas with Windows, it just goes and does it. Well, a lot of the time it just goes and does it, so of course that's the problem. Okay, it's updated the update manager, so now there are quite a number of updates to come in. You can have a look at the updates and what they are on here, and as you can see, there are quite a few to come in. So before we actually do the updates, there's one thing that we need to do first, and that's to make sure that we're getting the right support files. So click on the Start button, and then come down to Administration, and you want Synaptic Package Manager. So click on Synaptic Package Manager, and again you'll need to enter your password. Wait for it to populate itself. Okay, you can show this. Click on Settings, Preferences, and the one you want is Consider Recommended Packages as Dependencies. It's in the General tab, and it's this one. So you need to put a tick into that. Click on Apply and OK, and then close. Refresh the list in the Update Manager, and what will now happen is that if a particular program requires or needs to use a different piece of software, it will actually tell you that it needs to download it, and that way you have the choice of downloading it. Okay, so we're now going to download and install the updates, and to do that all you do is click on Install Updates. Very easy. Now again, this is going to take some time. As you can see, it needs to download a number of other things, so we'll click on OK. And as we're going to be changing system files, you need to be putting your password in. You need to put your password in. Right, again, this is going to take a few minutes, so what we're going to do is we'll come back when it's finished. Right, well that took rather a long time to do all its updates. I'm not too sure why it took quite so long, but it did. Not to worry. As you can see, the system is up to date. Now, you'll notice that in the system tray you have a shield with a tick in it. Now, if it has the tick in it, it means your system is up to date. If it's blue, it means that there are updates waiting to happen. Okay, so you can just click on it to open Update Manager. Next to that, you actually have your system information, and it says that there are some problems which require your attention. We'll come to this in a moment, because the problems are probably the driver manager. So we'll come, now that we've updated the system, we'll go to the driver manager. Again, it requires that we enter the password, and it'll update the cache, which will take a moment. And on our system, it seems that we have no drivers in use, which may or may not be a problem. We'll have a look at that later. Normally you will have a list of drivers here, and then you can select the driver that best suits your system. So for example, if you have an nvidia graphics card, you may have a choice of 2 or 3 graphics cards. The default one will be loaded, which is probably not the nvidia one. And then what you'll need to do is select the nvidia graphics card that suits your system. Linux is very good at trying to find the correct one and identifying the correct one, so it will usually come up with the correct one. If not, when you did your system backup, you should have actually checked which graphics card you have, and if it's listed, you can then enter it. If it's not listed, you can go onto the site, for example, onto the nvidia site, and download the correct driver. So that's the driver manager. I'll need to solve my little problem at the top. The next is, let's have a look at the desktop layout. But before we do that, I'm just going to run through the main display screen. Ignore this black and silver line at the top and the silver line at the bottom. This is all part of VirtualBox, so you can ignore that. It's just what's inside the 2 silver lines, the 2 grey lines. So you have just exactly the same as in Windows. You have your desktop here, and you've got the various icons which you can put on your desktop. You have the taskbar at the bottom with a start button, and then you have your quick launch items on the bottom, and you can add things to the quick launch as you wish. You have the system tray, which has information in it. We'll have a look at the problems. Let's see what it says. It'll probably tell me that we've got a problem with the display driver, which I can solve a bit later on from mine. But apart from that, it should give no other problems, I hope. It does take a moment. It does actually look through. Right, okay. Install language packs. Now this is a good thing to do, so just click on install language packs. It again will update the cache. It always makes sure it's got the latest version. And You can see that there are some items to come in, so we'll click on continue, and again, because it's to do with the system, you need to put in your password. So if that password authentication comes up when you're actually not installing anything or not expecting to install anything, you know that there's something trying to access your system. For example, if you're just surfing the web, or you're doing something innocuous and it suddenly pops up, you go, "Ooh, why has this appeared?" Because it won't just appear by itself, something will activate it. Either yourself by doing an update, or some malicious program trying to do an update. Okay, so we have no problems were detected. System information is basic system about information about your system, what the sizes are, this type of thing. And if you have any crashes, it will give you details here that you can actually look at as well. Okay, so when there's no information required, then you won't have the triangle at the bottom here. You have information about removable drives. I've actually got a removable drive loaded. Your network, and you can click on it and you can see that we're in a wired network, and you can access the network settings from there if necessary. Your speakers and your sound settings here, your battery, as we're actually on a laptop, and of course the time. Okay, so coming across to the start button. The start button brings up the start menu. Now you have a quick start bar here. Firefox, add and remove programs. This is very good for you. It's a software manager. Okay, this is your system settings. This is terminal, which everybody is frightened of when they first start on Linux, but actually it's very, very useful indeed. This is your file manager. This will lock the screen, and this will log you out, and finally this is your shutdown restart. Over on this side you actually have an area where you can type in something. So we did time shift before, so if I just start typing, you can see it automatically comes up. And once you actually start using Linux, you'll find that this is really very easy to use, and it's actually quicker than sometimes than actually trying to find the item. You have the usual main folders, accessories, which has things like calculators, character maps, that type of thing. Graphics, so you have a drawing package, you have pics and a simple scan. You have, and this is all by default, I haven't added anything here, this is all comes by default. You have Firefox, you have HexChat, Thunderbird Mail, which is a very good replacement for Outlook or Outlook Express if you have that. Office, it comes as standard, and it can read all your Microsoft Office documents, and it can create Microsoft Office documents as well. And it's all there, we'll look at that later. Sound and video, at the moment I've only got celluloid, which is for viewing videos, and Rhythmbox. We can probably add things later. Administration, now there's a lot in here, most of which you probably won't need, but it's nice to have at some point if it is needed. They're in here. So for example, things like system reports and that type of thing. You'll also find that time shift and update manager, and if you need to add users, are here. If you need to add a printer, you can do it through this. Okay, and then we come down to preferences, and this is where we're going to go next. So if we click on preferences, you can see that we have a lot of items that we can set up. So I'll use the shortcut, and here are our system settings. So you can set up backgrounds, effects, font selection, themes, that type of thing. I shall just go into themes, and you can actually change how things look. So for example, you can have the dark border, and you can have, for example, the dark buttons, so it looks like that if you wish. You don't have to. You can change anything you like. It doesn't really matter. We'll go back to where we were before, as you can see, and your icons and your desktop. I just change the bar at the top. Okay, you can add and remove items, and you can actually change the various different settings that you want here as to how the scroll bar and whether or not there are icons on buttons. I tend to leave this more or less as is. Okay, we'll be adding some fonts later on. Backgrounds, if you wish, we can add a background. So double click on it, and there are a number of backgrounds that you can select. So just have a look through and just select the one that you like the best. You've probably noticed that I've already got some backgrounds set up, and in fact it's this one here that I'm using on my normal system, but I'll use a different one on here so that I know I'm on a different monitor, and I'm going to use waves. So you can actually add pictures of your own as well. You've got settings, so you can actually have them as a slideshow instead of just one static one. Okay, effects, this is how the windows open and close, that type of thing. Again, I tend to leave all of these as is. You can change them. If you've got not very much memory or whatever, you may want to actually change those and switch them off. Account details will come down here. Accessibility is, of course, for things like large screen, large fonts, that type of thing. Account details, this is about your account, so you can put a picture on if you want, your name and your password. Applets, now these are little programs that you can run if you wish. You can see that I've got a calendar here already and group windows list and that type of thing. So there are a number of applets you can run if you wish. I don't tend to do anything with this. I tend to leave them as is, but if you want applets, then there are here quite a few, and you can download more if you wish. Date and time is your date and time settings. So as you can see, we're in Europe, London, but you can change your date and time settings, and you can change how it's displayed at the bottom here, and we get the date and time from the network. Desklets, these are just things that you can pin onto the desktop if you wish. Again, your choice. The desktop, this is how your desktop is to see what items there are on the desktop. You'll notice that the drives that I had mounted are no longer showing. If I wanted to show them, I can do that and have them on the desktop, or I can clean the desktop up and just have the items I wish. Okay, extensions. Now these are items to go down at the bottom. Oops, I don't seem to have any, but you can download and add them if you wish. General settings, these are, again, this is very little. I do very little with this. I can't, yes, if you're logging out or shutting down, you can have a timer and this type of thing. Okay, hot corners. What this allows you to do is if you move your mouse into a corner, something will happen. Again, it's relatively useful, but be careful about using the bottom two corners, because as you're coming down to these, it might actually activate. So for example, if we activate the one at the top, you can see it shows all windows. Okay, and you can actually change what it's actually going to do. I shall turn that off. Input method. Okay, this is really for different keyboards and this type of thing. So if you have Chinese or Japanese or an Asian keyboard, then you can actually use that. Oops, that's better. Okay, languages. Now, if you have multiple languages or you need to work in multiple languages, you can do that. As you can see, we're running in UK. I can add a different language by clicking on add and remove languages, and again you need to enter your password. So for example, you can see that all the English ones are fully installed in here, and it installs all of them except for that one there. So I shall click on Install Language Pack, and it should finish installing the British English one. There we go. I quite often actually add French as well, but I won't do that just now. So that's languages done. Okay, notifications. This is how things are displayed if there's a notification for some reason. They're enabled, so I will actually receive a notification if something is required. You can actually have them automatically time out, which may or may not be a good thing. I don't have that simply because if there is a notification, it's usually because there's a problem. Okay, and you can test, so that's a test notification. Online accounts, so if you have YouTube, Google, this type of thing, you can actually have your various accounts here. Panel, this is the panel at the bottom, and you can actually change the size. So let's just change the height to about... I don't like these slider bars because of my OCD. I need to have exact numbers, so it does make it difficult for me. Here you can actually see that I've made the panel at the bottom smaller, which is something I prefer. Okay, preferred applications. These are ones that will, if you double click on them, what will actually start. So for mail it's Thunderbird, for example. You can actually change that to something else. Plain text documents and this type of thing. Right, privacy, what to happen. So you can actually have it remember recently accessed files or remove them and never forget them, that type of thing, and how long to remember them for. Okay, screensaver, again this is exactly the same as Windows. Delay before starting, lock the computer when it goes to sleep, this type of thing. I usually give myself 30 seconds or so, just in case I don't want it locking. Startup applications, basically this is what happens on startup. Some items you might need to delay the startup so that other items that it depends on start first. Okay, so you can see that these have automatically been put in. But for example, if you have Dropbox or something like that, you might want to delay Dropbox from starting by a minute so that everything else has come in before Dropbox starts. Windows. So these are the windows that we see and how they're actually, you can have them traditional style like this, or you can actually have them Mac style on that side, depending on what you like. And you can actually decide what happens when you click on the action bar at the top. Okay? So for example, middle click and that time double click, that sort of thing. Right, okay. Windows tiling, this is how they actually control where they are on the screen. Again, you can actually have them snap to the sides of the screen if you wish, and you can have this display, the heads-up display. I'm not a big fan of this. It really does actually annoy me most of the time, so I do actually switch it off, but if you want it, you can actually switch it on. Workspaces, you can have multiple workspaces or desktops which you can interchange, so you can actually just change which workspace. We'll go into that a bit later in a different video. Then you've got your details from, for example, this would be the control panel in Windows, so you can actually deal with the various details. For example, the mouse and touchpad. You've got various different things that you can do with that, and with the touchpad you can enable it. I've got and disable when it's disable touchpad when it's typing, so these are all good things to have. You can have a look at your network and that type of thing. Here, add a printer. I don't have any printers yet. Oops, as you can see there's no printer on that. Oops. Thank you. You can your sound and this type of thing, system info. And this is your administration at the bottom. Now, if you're behind a router, if you have a router modem for your system, then the firewall is semi-optional. Now, I would recommend that you turn the firewall on, but if you have problems accessing certain things, then how many firewalls is it open? Just one. Okay, if you have problems accessing certain files or whatever, then it may well be because you need to change the firewall. Working with the firewall is a separate video in itself, but just for now you want to change status to on, so it goes green. There we are. And as I say, if you do have problems, you can just come into the firewall and switch status off, do whatever you need to do, and then remember to come back in and set it up again. Okay, on that. Your login window, your software sources, and your users and groups. We had a look at the user in the group a bit earlier. So that's system settings. Now there are one or two things that it would be a good idea to change when you're working in Linux. So let's have a look at one or two items that you can actually change. If you have a solid state drive, then there are ways of actually changing how Linux actually operates to benefit the solid state drive. Now Linux or Linux Mint actually does do some work to optimize for solid state drives, but there are some other things that you can do in there. You can add some better microphone controls and things like that if you wish. I'm just having a look to see what you should do. One of the things that you'll need to do is probably improve your font support, because you'll need to load in some of the Microsoft fonts which we don't normally have in Linux. So if you click on menu and you come to the software manager, the first time it runs it'll take a moment. Okay. So you can see that there are quite a number of categories and software that you can pick from. So for example, if you need an ebook reader, you've got Calibre here. You've got all types of things. So if you need, for example, a VPN, there's a VPN here. You've got drawing programs, you've got games, this type of thing, and you can actually look through the list. The one we want actually is fonts. So I'm just going to type in MS fonts. Hopefully it'll find the one I'm looking for. Okay, so installer for Microsoft TrueType fonts, TTF MS Core fonts is the one you want. So we double click on this, and what it's going to do is it's going to add some of the standard Microsoft fonts into the system. So click on install, and it needs some extra items, so click on continue, and again you'll need to enter your password because we're installing things into the system, and this should take a moment while it's doing it. My disk drive is running. You can actually see the little light bottom here, so just waiting for it to install. It's probably downloading a number of items as well. Here we go. Right, now because this is Microsoft, you actually have to agree to the license, so you need to accept the license and then click next. If you don't like Microsoft products, then you don't have to install this, but click next and it should install. Don't worry about this, this will disappear. This is the important thing at the top. It's actually installing as we speak. See, the light is flashing down at the bottom here. Right, that's it installed, and as you can see you have the option to remove it if you wish, but it is now installed. So click on the back button and we've got Microsoft fonts. Now click on the back button again and you can actually have a look through here and see if there's anything that you want. There are lots and lots and lots of things. If you need to run Windows programs, then you can put Wine on, but I strongly recommend you do not do this. It will open up your Linux system to viruses and that type of thing, which you don't want. So if necessary, and if you do need to run Windows programs, then I would actually create a virtual machine using VirtualBox. So for example, okay, and you will just install VirtualBox, and then quite simply you create a virtual machine using your Microsoft CD-ROM that you got with your original computer. Okay, so you can have a look through all of this. We're in the editor's picks at the moment, but if you're interested in sound and video, you can click on sound and video, and we've got things like VLC and all sorts of things. And you can see that there are actually a lot of items that you can actually install, some of which are useful, some which you might not find as useful. So you can see LibreOffice Writer, it's installed, there's a green tick and everything. So you've actually got a number of different ones that you can install if you wish. Okay, so there's lots and lots and lots. So that was a quick run through, and well, it wasn't as quick as I was hoping. It was much longer than I was hoping, but that's now your Linux setup. Now, if you want to configure your system to be a bit more secure, I will put a link to a video that I've already done about that up in the top corner, so that you can actually see that, and you can actually go there to configure your Linux system. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, as it does help the algorithms very much, and it does help my channel. And we'll see you next time.